Life unfolds in seasons. Some are bright and full of promise, others dark and heavy with uncertainty. Yet across every generation, culture, and circumstance, human beings have searched for wisdom that can guide them through these changing times. The Book of Proverbs stands as one of the most enduring sources of such wisdom. It does not promise an easy life, nor does it offer shortcuts to success. Instead, it offers principles, timeless truths that shape character, sharpen discernment, and anchor the soul when life feels unstable. These principles are not merely religious sayings. They are observations drawn from life itself, refined through experience, and confirmed through centuries of human struggle and growth. Proverbs teaches how to think, how to act, how to speak, and how to walk wisely through both abundance and adversity. In a world driven by speed, noise, and constant distraction, these principles call us back to something deeper: discipline, humility, patience, integrity, and reverence for what truly matters. This journey through 12 principles is not meant to be rushed. Each principle is a mirror, inviting self-examination, and a compass, pointing toward a life of wisdom. As you move through these teachings, allow them to speak not only to your mind, but to your habits, your decisions, and the direction of your life. What follows begins with the foundation upon which all wisdom is built and continues with the first essential lessons that shape a life of stability and purpose. The foundation of wisdom and the power of discipline. Principle 1. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The Book of Proverbs opens with a declaration that sets the tone for everything that follows. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. This statement is not about fear in the sense of terror or anxiety. Rather, it refers to reverence, awe, and a deep recognition of something greater than oneself. It is the understanding that life has order, meaning, and moral structure, and that human wisdom begins when we acknowledge we are not the center of the universe. This principle confronts one of the greatest struggles of modern life: the illusion of self-sufficiency. Many people today believe wisdom comes from experience alone, intelligence, or personal opinion. Proverbs challenges this by teaching that true wisdom begins with humility. To fear the Lord is to recognize limits, to accept that there are truths beyond personal preference, and to submit one's decisions to a higher moral standard. This mindset reshapes everything. It affects how one handles success, how one responds to failure, and how one treats others. Without this foundation, knowledge can become arrogance, and intelligence can become destructive. A person may know many things and still live foolishly if they lack reverence. This principle teaches that wisdom is not simply knowing what is right, but choosing to live in alignment with it. Even when it is difficult, it calls for a life anchored in respect for truth, justice, and moral accountability. When this reverence is present, decisions gain clarity, pride loses its grip, and life begins to align with purpose rather than impulse. Principle 2. Discipline is the path to growth and stability. Closely connected to reverence is discipline. Proverbs repeatedly emphasizes the value of correction, instruction, and self-control. Discipline is not punishment, it is training. It is the intentional shaping of behavior toward long-term good rather than short-term comfort. Many people desire success, peace, and fulfillment, but few are willing to embrace the discipline required to achieve them. Proverbs teaches that those who reject discipline harm themselves, while those who accept it gain understanding and strength. Discipline shapes character in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It governs habits, thoughts, speech, and reactions. Without discipline, talent fades, potential remains unrealized, and life becomes reactive rather than purposeful. This principle applies to every area of life: finances, relationships, health, and spiritual growth. A disciplined person learns to say no to what is easy in order to say yes to what is meaningful. Proverbs makes it clear that discipline is an expression of wisdom, not restriction. It is the bridge between intention and outcome. Those who embrace correction grow steadily, while those who resist it repeat the same mistakes endlessly. Discipline also teaches patience, reminding us that growth is gradual and that lasting change is built through consistency, not bursts of effort. When discipline is embraced, life becomes more stable, decisions become clearer, and progress becomes inevitable. This principle reminds us that wisdom is not only about knowing the right path, but having the strength to walk it every day, even when motivation fades. Principle 3. Guarding the heart as the source of life. The Book of Proverbs repeatedly returns to the idea that the heart is the center of human existence. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. This principle reaches deeper than emotions. It speaks to the core of a person's thoughts, intentions, beliefs, and motivations. The heart, in biblical wisdom, is the control center of life. What is allowed to take root there eventually shapes decisions, habits, relationships, and destiny. Many people attempt to change their circumstances without ever addressing what is happening inside them. Proverbs teaches that this approach is flawed, because outward behavior is only the visible result of inner realities. When the heart is filled with resentment, fear, pride, or envy, those elements inevitably surface in speech and action. Conversely, when the heart is cultivated with wisdom, humility, gratitude, and truth, life begins to reflect stability and clarity. Guarding the heart does not mean isolating oneself from the world or suppressing emotions. It means being intentional about what influences are allowed to shape one's inner world. This includes the voices we listen to, the ideas we consume, the environments we remain in, and the relationships we tolerate. Every word heard, every image seen, every belief repeated leaves an imprint. Proverbs warns that careless exposure leads to confusion, moral drift, and inner unrest. The wise person learns to filter influences carefully, understanding that not everything that feels good is beneficial, and not everything that is popular is true. Guarding the heart also requires honesty with oneself. It means recognizing when bitterness is forming, when pride is taking hold, or when fear is beginning to dictate decisions. This level of self-awareness demands humility because it forces a person to confront uncomfortable truths. Yet it is precisely this awareness that leads to growth. A guarded heart is not a closed heart. It is a protected one. It remains open to learning, correction, and love, but closed to corruption and deception. Over time, this discipline brings emotional stability, clarity of purpose, and resilience in the face of adversity. Those who guard their hearts wisely are less easily shaken by external circumstances because their foundation is internal and secure. Principle 4. The power of words to build or destroy. Few themes appear as consistently in Proverbs as the power of speech. Words are never portrayed as neutral. They are either instruments of life or tools of destruction. The tongue has the power of life and death, Proverbs declares, revealing that speech carries consequences far beyond the moment it is spoken. Words shape relationships, influence emotions, create opportunities, and destroy trust. They can heal deeply or wound permanently. This principle is especially relevant in a world where communication is constant and often careless. Many speak without thinking, react without reflection, and express emotions without restraint. Proverbs teaches a different way: restraint, wisdom, and intentional speech. The wise person understands that silence is often more powerful than speech, and that timing matters as much as content. A gentle answer can diffuse anger, while a harsh word can ignite conflict. Words spoken in haste often reveal more about the speaker than the situation itself. This principle also extends inward to the words we speak to ourselves. Negative self-talk, repeated often enough, shapes identity and limits potential. Proverbs encourages speech that is truthful, encouraging and constructive, not only toward others, but within one's own mind. Speaking wisely requires self-control, emotional maturity, and awareness of consequence. It means choosing honesty without cruelty, clarity without arrogance, and correction without condemnation. Over time, a person's reputation is largely formed by their words. Trust is built when speech is consistent and sincere, while credibility erodes when words are careless or deceptive. Proverbs teaches that wise speech flows from a wise heart, and that wisdom reveals itself not in how much one speaks, but in how carefully one chooses words. Those who master their speech gain influence, peace, and respect. Those who neglect this principle often find themselves entangled in conflict, misunderstanding, and regret. Words, once spoken, cannot be retrieved, but they can be guided, disciplined, and used as instruments of life. Principle 5. The value of humility in every season of life. Humility stands at the heart of wisdom in Proverbs, not as weakness, but as strength under control. The modern world often confuses humility with insecurity or lack of ambition, yet Proverbs presents it as one of the greatest indicators of inner maturity. To be humble is to understand one's place in the larger order of life, to recognize limitations without being diminished by them, and to remain teachable regardless of status or achievement. Humility is what allows a person to grow without becoming arrogant and to succeed without becoming blind to others. Proverbs repeatedly warns that pride precedes destruction, not because success is dangerous, but because pride distorts perception. When a person begins to believe they are self-sufficient, they stop listening, stop learning, and eventually stop seeing their own errors. Humility keeps the mind open and the heart soft. It allows correction to be received without resentment and wisdom to be gained without resistance. In practical terms, humility influences how one responds to criticism, how one treats people of lesser status, and how one handles moments of failure. A humble person does not need to prove their worth. They understand it comes from character, not recognition. This principle also teaches patience. Humility accepts that growth takes time and that shortcuts often lead to shallow results. It resists the temptation to compare paths, understanding that every life unfolds at a different pace. In relationships, humility fosters empathy and reduces conflict because it prioritizes understanding over winning. In leadership, it builds trust because people follow those who listen and serve rather than dominate. Proverbs shows that humility attracts favor not through manipulation, but through integrity. Those who walk humbly are more resilient in adversity, more grounded in success, and more at peace regardless of circumstance. This principle teaches that true greatness is not found in elevation, but in alignment with wisdom, restraint, and respect for others. Principle 6. Diligence as the path to provision and purpose. Proverbs places extraordinary emphasis on diligence, portraying it as a defining difference between those who build stable lives and those who struggle unnecessarily. Diligence is not merely hard work, it is consistent, focused effort applied with intention and responsibility. It is the opposite of laziness, procrastination, and entitlement. The diligent person understands that effort today creates freedom tomorrow. Proverbs contrasts the diligent with the sluggard, not to shame, but to illustrate the consequences of neglect. The sluggard desires results without effort, comfort without discipline, and reward without responsibility. Over time, this mindset leads to lack, frustration, and dependence. Diligence, on the other hand, compounds. Small acts of consistency accumulate into stability, skill, and opportunity. This principle applies not only to work, but to character, relationships, and personal growth. A diligent person tends their responsibilities faithfully, even when motivation is low or recognition is absent. They understand that excellence is built in unseen moments. Proverbs teaches that diligence brings provision not by luck, but by alignment with the natural order of effort and reward. It also teaches patience, because diligence does not demand immediate results. It trusts the process, knowing that growth often happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible. In a world driven by instant gratification, diligence stands as a quiet but powerful force. It teaches restraint, planning, and endurance. Those who practice diligence are less shaken by uncertainty because they have built habits that sustain them. They do not depend on sudden opportunities. They are prepared when opportunity arrives. Diligence also brings dignity. There is a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from knowing one has done their part faithfully. Proverbs makes it clear that diligence is not about perfection, but persistence. It is the steady commitment to doing what is right, even when it is difficult or unnoticed. Over time, this principle produces not only material stability, but also inner confidence and peace. Principle 7, the power of patience and the danger of impulsiveness. Proverbs repeatedly contrasts patience with impulsiveness, presenting them as two opposing forces that shape the outcome of a person's life. Patience is not portrayed as passivity or weakness, but as inner strength, the ability to restrain emotion, delay reaction, and remain steady under pressure. Impulsiveness, on the other hand, is shown as a lack of control that leads to regret, broken relationships, and unnecessary hardship. The wisdom of Proverbs reveals that many of life's greatest mistakes are not the result of ignorance, but of haste. Decisions made in anger, fear, pride, or desire often feel justified in the moment, yet they carry consequences that linger far longer than the emotions that cause them. Patience teaches restraint. It allows time for clarity, understanding, and discernment to develop before action is taken. A patient person learns to observe rather than react, to listen rather than interrupt, and to wait rather than force outcomes. This principle is especially vital in moments of conflict, where words spoken too quickly can destroy trust that took years to build. Proverbs teaches that a calm spirit has great understanding, while a quick temper reveals folly. This is not merely about emotional control, but about wisdom in movement. Life unfolds in seasons, and each season requires a different response. Patience allows a person to recognize when to act and when to wait. Impulsiveness, by contrast, rushes forward blindly, often mistaking urgency for importance. Over time, impatience drains energy, damages credibility, and leads to cycles of regret. Patience builds resilience. It strengthens the ability to endure discomfort without losing direction. It also deepens character, because waiting requires faith. Faith that the right outcome will come in the right time. Proverbs emphasizes that patience often leads to honor, while impulsiveness leads to shame. Those who learn to master this principle gain emotional stability and mental clarity. They are less controlled by circumstances and more guided by wisdom. Patience does not eliminate challenges, but it transforms how challenges are faced. It replaces panic with perspective and reaction with reflection. Principle 8. The wisdom of seeking counsel and avoiding isolation. Another central teaching in Proverbs is the importance of counsel. Wisdom, according to Proverbs, is rarely formed in isolation. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. This principle challenges the modern tendency toward independence and self-reliance, taken to extremes. While personal responsibility is important, Proverbs makes it clear that isolation often leads to blind spots. No one sees the full picture alone. Each person carries biases, limitations, and emotional filters that affect judgment. Seeking counsel does not mean surrendering responsibility. It means strengthening decision-making through perspective. Wise counsel provides correction, clarity, and balance. It exposes assumptions, challenges flawed thinking, and offers insight that may not be visible from within one's own experience. Proverbs distinguishes between wise counsel and noise. Not every opinion deserves equal weight. Wisdom comes from seeking advice from those who demonstrate integrity, experience, and discernment. It warns against listening to flatterers or those who merely confirm what one already wants to hear. True counsel may be uncomfortable at times, but it protects from costly mistakes. This principle also highlights the danger of pride, which resists guidance and insists on autonomy at all costs. Proverbs repeatedly associates pride with downfall, not because confidence is wrong, but because arrogance closes the door to growth. Isolation magnifies error. When a person refuses counsel, they become trapped within their own perspective, repeating the same mistakes without realizing why. Conversely, those who welcome wisdom from others grow faster, make better decisions, and develop stronger judgment over time. Seeking counsel also builds humility and strengthens relationships. It acknowledges that wisdom is collective and that learning is lifelong. This principle encourages community, accountability, and mutual growth. It teaches that wisdom flourishes where humility and openness exist. Those who apply this principle tend to navigate life's complexities with greater clarity and fewer regrets, because they understand that guidance is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of maturity. Principle 9. The discipline of integrity and the weight of honesty. Proverbs treats integrity not as an optional virtue, but as a foundation upon which a stable life is built. Integrity is the alignment between what a person thinks, says, and does. It is consistency of character, regardless of circumstance or audience. The book repeatedly contrasts the upright with the deceitful, making it clear that dishonesty may offer short-term advantage, but always leads to long-term loss. Integrity protects a person from inner division. When actions match values, the mind remains clear, the conscience unburdened, and decisions easier to make. Dishonesty, by contrast, creates internal conflict. It forces a person to remember lies, maintain appearances, and constantly manage fear of exposure. Proverbs teaches that this inner chaos eventually spills outward, affecting relationships, reputation, and peace of mind. Integrity is not perfection, it is sincerity. It is the willingness to do what is right even when it is inconvenient, costly, or unnoticed. This principle applies to speech, business dealings, relationships, and private behavior. Proverbs emphasizes that honest scales delight the Lord, while dishonest ones invite destruction. This metaphor extends beyond commerce. It speaks to fairness, transparency, and moral consistency in all areas of life. Integrity builds trust, and trust becomes a form of currency more valuable than money. Once lost, it is difficult to restore. Those who walk in integrity may face challenges, especially in environments where deception seems rewarded, but Proverbs assures that their path is ultimately secure. Integrity provides clarity in decision-making because it removes the temptation to compromise. It also fosters self-respect, which no external reward can replace. A person of integrity sleeps peacefully, speaks confidently, and walks without fear of exposure. Over time, integrity shapes reputation, attracts healthy relationships, and establishes a legacy of reliability. It is a quiet strength that sustains a person through both prosperity and adversity. Principle 10. The power of self-control over destructive desires. Proverbs offers some of its strongest warnings about the danger of uncontrolled desire. Whether it is anger, lust, greed, or envy, unchecked impulses are portrayed as forces that gradually erode judgment and lead to destruction. Self-control, therefore, is not repression but mastery. It is the ability to govern one's impulses rather than be ruled by them. Proverbs compares a person without self-control to a city without walls, exposed, vulnerable, and easily overtaken. This imagery underscores how essential restraint is to personal safety and stability. Desires themselves are not condemned, they are part of human nature. The danger lies in allowing them to dictate behavior without wisdom or boundaries. Proverbs teaches that discipline creates freedom, while indulgence creates bondage. When a person lacks self-control, short-term pleasure often overrides long-term well-being. This leads to patterns of regret, broken trust, and lost opportunities. Self-control, on the other hand, strengthens decision-making and protects future possibilities. It allows a person to pause, reflect, and choose what aligns with their values rather than what satisfies immediate cravings. This principle also extends to emotional responses. Anger, when uncontrolled, damages relationships and clouds judgment. Proverbs advises patience and restraint, reminding that those who master their spirit are stronger than those who conquer cities. Self-control is developed through practice, awareness, and intentional choice. It grows as one learns to recognize triggers, set boundaries, and prioritize long-term outcomes over momentary relief. Over time, self-control leads to inner peace, confidence, and resilience. It frees a person from being driven by external circumstances or internal impulses. Proverbs presents self-control as a hallmark of wisdom, maturity, and strength, emphasizing that true power is not dominance over others, but mastery of oneself. Principle 11. The wisdom of patience in success and adversity. Proverbs repeatedly reminds the reader that life is not measured by speed, but by direction. One of the greatest illusions of human thinking is the belief that progress must be immediate in order to be meaningful. Wisdom teaches the opposite. Patience is the quiet strength that allows growth to occur without forcing outcomes before their time. Proverbs emphasizes that haste often leads to error, while patience leads to stability and understanding. This principle applies equally to moments of success and moments of struggle. In success, patience prevents arrogance. It reminds a person that achievements are rarely the result of a single effort, but of consistent choices made over time. It protects the heart from pride and the mind from recklessness. When success comes too quickly or without discipline, it often fades just as quickly. Proverbs warns that wealth gained hastily dwindles, while what is built slowly endures. This is not merely about money, but about reputation, influence, and personal growth. Patience teaches restraint, helping individuals avoid decisions driven by excitement rather than wisdom. In adversity, patience becomes even more essential. Difficult seasons often tempt people to abandon their values, compromise their integrity, or give up entirely. Proverbs encourages endurance, reminding us that hardship is not permanent and that wisdom is often formed through struggle. Patience in suffering develops resilience, perspective, and emotional maturity. It allows a person to endure discomfort without becoming bitter or reckless. Those who lack patience often seek escape rather than understanding, which leads to repeated cycles of pain. Patience, however, invites reflection. It asks what can be learned, what can be strengthened, and what must be released. This principle teaches that waiting is not wasted time, it is preparation. Many of life's most meaningful outcomes require seasons of quiet growth that are invisible to others. Patience builds character that lasts beyond temporary success or failure. It teaches trust in the process of life and faith in the value of perseverance. Those who cultivate patience develop inner stability that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. They learn to move with wisdom rather than urgency, and to act with intention rather than impulse. Principle 12. Living with purpose and reverence in every season. The final principle woven throughout Proverbs is the call to live with purpose, anchored in reverence and awareness. Life, according to Proverbs, is not random. Every action carries weight, every choice shapes direction, and every season holds meaning. Wisdom teaches that a purposeful life is not one driven by ambition alone, but by alignment with truth, integrity, and understanding. This principle brings together all the others, showing that wisdom is not fragmented, but holistic. Reverence grounds purpose. It reminds a person that life is larger than personal desire, and that actions have moral significance. When reverence is present, decisions are made with care, relationships are treated with respect, and time is valued rather than wasted. Proverbs emphasizes that the wise person considers the end of their actions, not just the beginning. Purposeful living requires awareness of consequence, responsibility, and legacy. It asks not only, "What do I want?" but, "What is right and what will this become?" Living with purpose also means understanding seasons. There are times to build, times to wait, times to speak, and times to remain silent. Wisdom recognizes these rhythms and moves in harmony with them rather than resisting them. A purposeful life is not chaotic or reactive. It is intentional, steady, and rooted in values that do not shift with circumstance. Proverbs teaches that those who live this way experience a deep sense of fulfillment, not because life is easy, but because it is meaningful. Purpose gives direction to effort and meaning to sacrifice. It transforms ordinary actions into acts of wisdom when done with integrity and awareness. As these principles come together, they form a guide, not just for behavior, but for character. The wisdom of Proverbs is not about perfection, but about alignment, aligning thoughts, actions, and values with truth. It teaches that life's seasons will change, but wisdom remains constant. Those who embrace these principles develop clarity in confusion, strength in weakness, and peace in uncertainty. They learn to navigate life with discernment rather than impulse, humility rather than pride, and purpose rather than aimlessness. In the end, Proverbs offers not a formula for success, but a foundation for a life well lived, steady, grounded, and guided by wisdom in every season.